Welcome to another episode of the Cash Physical Therapy Headquarters podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about how to make smart decisions in our practice. Okay, the title of this one is Busy Isn't Better, the Cash Clinic Owner's Guide to Productivity. Now, the problem that we're seeing a lot of people have is they are busier than ever. They're working their faces off, but they're not actually growing their practice and they don't know why. And it's because most people are using an operating system of sticky notes and notepads and all these to-do items that just keep accumulating and building up, but there's no method of prioritization to figure out like which of these things is actually going to move the needle, what's important, what's not important, what should I focus on, and what can I just throw away and not even worry about. And so today we're going to give you the frameworks that we've learned and share some stories on how to effectively look at our practice, identify what our biggest constraints are, a framework for identifying, okay, of these constraints, what are my options and the levers I can pull to solve those constraints? And of those levers, how do I make a mini financial forecast that's going to tell me which of these levers is going to have the biggest impact on my practice? This could potentially be the most useful training and podcast that we've done in several weeks because I'd be willing to bet many of you are working on a lot of crap that is not moving the needle and you have no idea what you should focus on and when. Today, we want to clear all that up. Good morning, Ben.
Morning. Yeah, I think this is great, and I think it's something that I wish I would have had because it's easy to fall on that dopamine hit of, oh, I crossed something off my to-do list.
Yeah.
But was it something that
It feels good.
Right?
It
But
does feel good.
but there's an opportunity cost that comes with it because that's time that could be spent elsewhere that does move the needle. So.
Right. There's and I've made this mistake too. When we were building, like when we were in startup accelerator programs that like funded our businesses, the operating system that we were taught is called Scrum. It's a method of organizing and prioritizing your tasks where it's basically imagine a whiteboard with two lines. So you have three columns. There's to-dos, doing, and done. And it felt so good to just move a sticky note and get it in that done column. But what ended up happening is because it felt good to cross off lists, we tend to just go to the items that we can cross off quickly, which are very often the least important things on your list, just to give us that dopamine of crossing something off or moving that sticky note to the done section. And so this is the problem that most practice owners have because they're going for that easy dopamine hit of crossing something off rather than thinking strategically around what on my list even needs to be there. And the things that remain, why are they still on that list? What is the impact that they're going to have? Okay, so a couple things we're going to cover here. How to identify the high leverage decisions that actually drive growth month over month. A simple system for prioritizing tasks without burning out. The biggest traps that keep founders stuck, we kind of already hit on that one, which is just allowing clutter to build up and thinking it's all important. And then how to align your calendar, your KPIs, and your team with your long-term goals. How do we make sure that we're structured in a way where there's time set aside to actually work on the things we got to do? So let's start with how to identify high leverage decisions that actually drive growth. Let's start with KPIs. Ben, you wanna dive into like, okay, you're just getting started. Let's say you're doing between $0 and $20,000 a month. Okay, let's talk about healthy habits. What should we track? How should we track it?
Yeah, I think the most important KPIs start with you personally. How much sleep you're getting, how much you're working out, stuff like that. But that's not for today's topic. You guys are all healthcare professionals. You guys know how important that is, but that's something that is severely overlooked. And it's one of the top three things that allowed me to propel my business as quickly as it did. Is I always got at least 7 hours of sleep. I always got at least an hour workout in 5 days a week. That's never changed since starting my practice. That's just something that was really important and helped a lot. So
and Actually, like I want to sit on that because that's a really good analogy for this. Actually, like I got asked yesterday by a client. It's like, how do you stay like so fit all the time? I was just like, it's honestly just like stress management. I have to work out, otherwise I kind of lose my mind, and it also builds that like fortitude of being able to handle stressful situations. Like I have to do it, and many of you work out, and sometimes you're really pressed for time. Maybe you're doing it in between patients, whatever. But when you are pressed for time, you're probably prioritizing your workouts. You're prioritizing the big tasks that are going to create the most reward or growth that you're actually going for. Maybe you'll leave some of the auxiliary workouts for a different day because you don't have the time. And many of you in your business and how you're prioritizing your tasks just to be able to like get it done, you're focusing on a lot of auxiliary workouts rather than the core lifts that you know you should be doing to achieve your life and fitness goals. And so we got to kind of take that same psychology with how we prioritize things in our workouts and pull that over into our business. And it comes with like understanding. But I love that you started off with that. I didn't think that was where you're going to go, because ultimately our businesses are a reflection of ourselves. And if your business is busted, probably start by working on you.
Right. So start there. That's most important, and it's just make things so much easier in your business. But when it comes to like KPIs, like within the business, and you're just starting out, the three that are most important is what's my call to evaluation, booking rate, and what's my evaluation to plan of care conversion rate is the big one. Those are two really big ones that are going to make a big difference. Just start with tracking those two first and foremost. Like, don't overwhelm yourself. Just start looking at those metrics and tracking those consistently. Those are big items too. But
I don't do this a lot. But I'm gonna share my screen with everybody real quick if my computer allows it. We're gonna do entire screen, and we're gonna do this one just to make it crystal clear for everyone. No matter what stage of business you're at, you should be doing this. There's 5 core mechanisms, and each of these mechanisms has a metric that Ben just said that we should be tracking. There's lead acquisition. The KPI is leads generated and cost per lead. Okay, then there's lead nurturing. Okay, this is monthly booked calls from email, for example. Then we have conversions. Okay, these are the mechanisms. These are the KPIs. Okay. Then we have conversions. It's our IE to package close percentage. Okay. Now there's some other KPIs we can track in here, but if you're just getting started, keep it simple. Okay. If you just track these, you'll be in a pretty good spot. From here, we have fulfillment. Okay. So fulfillment, it's what would you say the best KPI to track here is? Because there's a lot of them.
Like for fulfillment, like how many visits did somebody do on average? How many sessions are they doing? So we in ProConnects, we want at least 9 visits per plan of care.
Yep. So that would fall under retention. So average visits per patient. So I would say this would be like the average NPS score.
Yeah, NPS score. Yeah.
Okay. Explain what an NPS score is for
NPS score stands for Net Promoter Score. It's essentially it's a ranking. We hand out a survey at the end of an evaluation, at the end of every evaluation, and then also a survey around halfway through their plan of care. And you can also do it at the end as well. We don't do it because we really don't view PT as an end point that people should continue on. So we don't actually do one at the end because there is no end point with ProConnect. So we just do at the beginning and then halfway through. And so essentially it's a survey that asks them one simple question. On a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to recommend ProConnect to a friend or family member?
Mm-hmm.
And there's different metrics. I can go into different like standards and gold standards for what you want to be at for the NPS score. You can search that or use that on ChatGPT if you want to get more information. But that's what it is. It's just essentially how well are you doing with delivering on the services and how happy are people with you and your practice.
Right. I love it. Super simple. Okay. So now these are the core metrics that we're going to use to drive any decisions we make ever. And if you're not using these metrics or some sort of metric that's tied to this, well, then you aren't. You're driving a business based off of emotion and gut decision making, which is a horrible way to. It's like treating a patient with just like intuition and like gut feelings. That's like a personal trainer or some just like fitness person deciding that they're going to give like medical advice to patients with like shoulder pain. Okay. We have to make sure that we're actually using informed data, good, clean data to make informed decisions. Okay. So once we have these, we have to know how do we like make decisions with these. Okay. So, good cost per lead would be, 50, let's say $50 a lead. Okay. What we really know like what a good healthy cost per lead is based off of our average visits per patient. If we know that we average 9 visits per patient and the average patient spends $200 with us, well then we know our lifetime value. What would that be? That'd be 18,000.
1800.
18,000. Okay. So this would mean our LTV is this. So a 50, even $100, $50 cost per lead would be a really good number if our LTV is $180. Okay. Leads generated. How do we know if this is healthy? Okay. Well, what's your package conversion rate? What's yours been?
We're at around 85-90%.
85% package conversions. Okay. Now, if your revenue goal is, $10,000 a month, okay, well, that means to get to $10,000 and our packages are, $1,500 a piece. Well, how many packages do we need to sell each and every month to get there? Can you do the math quick on that? 1,500. Okay, so we got to sell 7 packages. Okay, now if our conversion rate is 85%, that means we need 9 initial evals to, I think it's 9.
Yeah, somewhere there, like 8.
Right, it'd be like 8.5.
Yeah.
But we need 8.5 to 9 IEs to close 7 packages. Okay, well now we need to know what our lead to booking ratio actually is. Maybe it's 80%. So this would mean that per month, right around, we need 15 leads per month in order to hit our 10K goal. I'm sorry this is so disorganized, but this is how we start to make decisions. We have to know what our goal is. We have to know what we charge. We have to know what our close rates are so that we know it's like, okay, our KPI is lead generation. We need 15 leads per month. Are we on track for hitting that? Of leads who are generating, how well are we doing at getting them to actually book their calls so that we can get the appropriate number of IEs in the door to maintain, to hit our 85% close rate, to sell our 7 packages, to hit our 10K goal. Okay, so it's like we just have to think about these and forecast them so that we can make informed decision on these things. Now, I'm going to hide my scratch notes now because you're all seeing how scattered and disorganized my brain is, and you don't need any of that. Okay, so that's ultimately how we're using our KPIs. There's a little bit of projecting, a little bit of reverse engineering to figure out like what are the baseline numbers that we should be hitting so that we can start to make informed decisions. At first, put your best guess out there, do some sort of calculation to figure out what it looks like, just so we have a method to start making decisions based around numbers. Okay. Now, Ben, when you're looking at your numbers and you're deciding what's the core focus that we need to work on this month, what's your process and workflow look like for going through these numbers to identify like here's where our biggest constraint is?
Well, once you start tracking numbers and do it consistently, it just jumps out at you. You've got the numbers right in front of you. Like, what are you underperforming on? Like, your numbers are going to literally sit there and tell you what is the problem. So it gets very easy. You just need to start tracking it is the main thing. So I look at like how many, again, like look at the entire patient journey that patients go through. Like, for example, we start all the way from the beginning. Like, for example, lead generation.
Yeah.
Let's look at our website. How well is our website converting? What's our traffic? How much traffic are we getting to our website? Of that traffic, how much are converting into new patients? Are we above or below our expectation on where our website should be at? Great. We're below. Is that because it's historically done well and the traffic that we're pushing to it, like maybe, for example, we just started spending more on Google ads. Our website conversion rate decreased, but I expected that a little bit. We're pumping a little bit more colder traffic to the website. So you also have to be able to discern what's causing what. Am I going to go and change all of our website copy now? No, I got to deduct and figure out, hey, is there something else that could be going on? Yeah, we're pumping more cold traffic. Of course, our conversion rate's going to go down a little bit on our website because of that. So you could really fuck things up and be like, oh, now I'm changing my website copy. And now your website's converting. The website copy wasn't actually the issue, right? So you got to look at the numbers and then also look at, hey, what have I changed? And is that change making or hurting or influencing this? So now we've got our conversion rate from our website. Great. Now how many of those people, those leads, are we able to get in contact with? Okay, speed to lead. That's how is our sales team overwhelmed? Do we actually have too many leads that we can't get to leads fast enough? Yeah. Is it a personnel issue? Do I need to hire on another salesperson because they're not getting the leads fast enough? Or is it because the personnel is working inefficiently or they're just not the right fit? Right. So you got to see how there's different discernments that you got to make. Okay. Now we got somebody on the phone call. How many are we converting? Great. Right. Convert them. How many people are showing up? Do we have a show up issue? If we have a show up issue, is it because they're not being nurtured right? Is there things that we can do there? Now they came in, they convert to a plan of care. What's our conversion rate there? What's our attention to the continuity? So you just need to look at every pipeline stage, and we have metrics for every single part. And then we just look at, hey, what have we historically been at? What's healthy? What's not healthy? And then we can decide where the issue is.
Right. So it starts with identifying, and it should stare you right in the face. Like, which of the 5 mechanisms needs the most help right now? And then you focus on only one of those at a time. It's incredibly important. So if you're just getting started and you have some consistent referrals that are coming in, but your close percentage is 50%, well, then, before we start scaling lead acquisition, it makes sense to focus on improving our sales conversion rate because we already have consistent flow of people coming in, maybe not as many as we want. But before we pour gas on the fire, we got to solve our close percentage. And then if we're closing a lot of people, but then we're not retaining a lot of people, well, then before we pour gas on the fire, it makes sense to start to optimize our average visits per patient. And once we have a healthy close percentage and a healthy average visits per patient, where we're actually doing a good job retaining clients and we're getting them great results, well, now it's like, okay, well, now let's dial up the lead acquisition. But in a different scenario, if you don't have any lead acquisition, well, then it doesn't make sense to sit there and spend months training sales. Right? It makes sense to invest in the skill of how do I acquire consistent patients to even have the opportunity to start to train and practice sales on actual people. And so it all varies. There's no set framework for like solve these mechanisms in this order. It's all based off of your unique situation, reading the numbers and being able to map out, if I improved this metric by 10% or this mechanism by 10%, which of those is going to have the biggest impact on profit? Okay. And so it should stare you in the face. One thing I do want to add to that before we kind of move on, because once you identify the constraints, well, then there's a million different ways that you could think of to overcome those constraints. How do I identify which is the right way to do it? But before I say that, it's really important to know that you should never work on more than one at a given time. Okay. And I guess besides when you're first getting started and you're like building everything out, you have to build a baseline. But when you actually have a business and it is operating, we need to focus on one constraint at a time. There's a study done, and whenever we're working on new initiatives within our business, there's a cost that's associated with that, either real costs in hiring and implementing that new change they're adding on, or an opportunity cost that is spent on while you're actually implementing the thing. You're not working on the other things that are already creating the growth for you. And so you should expect a 20% loss whenever you're building out a new system or a new direction or a new thing within the business for that month. This means that for every additional thing that we're working on, it adds on an additional upwards of 20% loss that we should be expecting. And so this tells us that the most important skill that you should have is figuring out like what is the right problem to work on and what are the things that should be ignored. Okay, there should be stuff on your business that's on fire. So don't panic if some things are broken. They should be, because that's a sign that you're actually prioritizing and using your time effectively. And so if there are no fires in your business, that would tell Ben and I that A, you're probably not trying to achieve anything that's difficult or hard. And B, you don't know how to prioritize what it is that you're working on because you're focused on a whole bunch of stuff that doesn't actually move the needle and doesn't actually mean a whole lot.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. And the thing too is like the KPIs you're tracking is going to jump out at you, like Jordan said. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure it out. Like you guys have dissected the human body, you know all the origins, insertions, you know the tracks of the nervous system from brainstem all the way through the spinal column. If you look at these numbers, they're going to jump out at you. You're going to be able to figure it out.
Right.
That's the thing too, is don't underestimate your intelligence level. If you just need to start tracking, it's just simply just tracking it.
Right.
And you're gonna be able to look at it and just like, yeah, this is a no-brainer.
And it blows my mind. I've said this on other episodes where it's like, if a PT on Instagram says that your knees should never extend beyond your toes when you're doing squats, everyone will jump on, citing all of this research, basically telling this person he's a fucking idiot. But when it comes to like your business, research and data is just something that you refuse to do. But when it comes to like your patients and physical therapy, it's like crack, you love it and you love citing it and you love doing it. But it's for some reason when your life, your family's life, and the patients who need you are on the line, suddenly numbers and data are like too inconvenient.
Yeah.
It's like,
really,
what?
Really good point. But yeah, you're 100% spot on.
Right. But a lot of you have told me that you love the science of physical therapy. You love the problem solving and the basically just like working through issues using the data. And that's why you love it, right? You get to have the great relationships with the clients. You get to solve complicated issues someone else couldn't. But that's exactly what we're doing in business. It's the exact same thing, only the impact is instead of one-to-one, it's one-to-many. And so, yeah, you can work through a patient's shoulder, apply the right protocol, and get them a world-class result. But if you apply that same methodology of thinking to your business, you can change thousands of people's lives rather than just the person in front of you. So start approaching your business the same way you do with your patients, and apply the same kind of thinking of, which thing should I focus on fixing first? Should I start by focusing on the symptoms, or should I start by focusing on the root cause of the issue that's going on that's causing these symptoms to happen?
Yeah, we should have done the podcast there.
Right. Right. Honestly. So I want to give you all a quick framework on, okay, so once we identify the constraint, so for example, within Clinical Marketer, one of our constraints was volume of booked calls. That's what we identified looking at our data. Like, this is the biggest constraint. If we can solve this based on our conversion rates and the retention and the success rate of our clients, we're going to be able to grow really, really quickly. And so when we're looking at it, when we looked at solving this constraint, there's 3 levers that we identified that we could pull. It's improving the click-through rate of our ads, improving the opt-in rate of our landing page, or improving the show-up rate of the calls themselves. Within, online coaching, like our show up rate, it's a very different kind of number than, say, if someone's showing up for physical therapy. But those are the core levers that we can improve upon to improve booking rate. And so how do we go about deciding which of these things should we actually focus on? And so what we use is a framework called ICE. Okay. It's an acronym. It stands for impact, confidence, and ease. And so once you identify like what the core problem is and you come up with solutions that could potentially solve this problem, well, then we want to apply the ICE framework. And so the impact is the percentage increase we believe this idea could have on solving this problem. Okay. So for improving our opt-in rate, we're pretty confident that we could improve it by at least 1%. Okay. And so we put down 1%. And then for confidence that we could do it, we rate that out of 10. Okay. We are an 8 out of 10 confident that we can improve the click-through rate. And then ease, you think about, okay, to implement this strategy, how easy is it actually going to be? And then you're going to rate that out of 10. And so across the 3 different ways that we could have solved this problem, we map that out with the impact percentage we believe it'll have on the metric. And we just use our best guess on what's realistic. And then how confident are we in the plan will actually create that impact, then how easy is it to implement? And then you literally just add it together. The percentage increase plus the number you gave it for confidence, and then plus the number you gave it for ease. The highest score is 9 times out of 10 going to be the right strategy that you should go and implement. The one that has the highest impact, that you're the most confident about, that's the easiest to implement. So that's the easiest way that you can go about basically deciding what's important, what's not, and then be laser focused on following that plan to fruition. So another acronym that's fun that one of our client success directors, or our client success director, taught me was FOCUS. Follow one course until success. But that doesn't mean that when you recognize it's not working, you don't stop. That's still success. Whether you identify if it works or you identify it's not working, that is still success. So pick the one based on ICE and then follow it through until you know if it worked or not. Usually you need about 30 days to determine if it actually works.
Yeah. And that thing too is if you spend time on anything else, it's just wasted time.
Right. It's wasted effort. It's most of the things that you think are important that are on your to-do list. If you just didn't do them, odds are it's actually not going to have a big impact on you or your business.
Yeah.
Okay.
Start calling it your prioritization list, not your to-do list.
Right. It's kind of like politics, like all the things that people like bicker over and fight over. It's like at the end of the day, either way that it goes, like, is it really going to impact your life? That might be a controversial statement to say on the podcast, but it's like, it's kind of the true with like your to-do list. You're nitpicking all these little things, and the longer they're on your to-do list, the more you embellish them in your mind and the more important they seem. But at the end of the day, you could complete it or you cannot complete it, and the outcome would still be the same.
Yep.
You just didn't get the dopamine hit that you wanted from checking it off your list.
Right.
And that's a whole nother phenomenon that maybe we'll save for another one. But the longer something is on your mind, the more you procrastinate on it, the more your mind embellishes it and the bigger deal it seems, when in reality, it's like not important at all. And there's a big impact that it has on your like subconscious by like holding on to all this crap. That's why it's important. If you do ICE, nothing else on your to-do list is likely important. Now, obviously, there's some things like notes that you might have to do or following up the lead that you might have to do. But a lot of the other stuff you can just cross off or delegate. Okay. To give you now, once you kind of do this, another way you can take this a step further is what we did. I'll share my screen here again and do my best to talk through it for those of you who are just listening on the podcast. Share. Can we make this big? Okay. And so what we did is, so we believed that we could improve the opt-in rate of our landing pages by 8%. We were confident we could improve our show-up rate by 7%. And we're confident that we can improve our click-through rates by 1% as well. And all of these rated pretty well with ICE. We're pretty confident we could do it. We know that the implementation is pretty easy for all of them. And we knew the impact of these was pretty decent. Okay. And so how do we decide if they all seem like good ideas, which one we should do? And so what we did is we took our KPIs based off of our show up rates, our cost per lead, our booking rates, our close rates, all of that stuff. And we basically plugged it into ChatGPT and a spreadsheet to forecast, if we implemented one of these 3 strategies, forecast out to me the impact that it would actually have on monthly revenue. Okay. And this is the power of like when you actually have accurate data, you can do pretty cool projections like this. And so now whenever we are deciding what thing we should focus on, we identify the constraints. It's usually staring us in the face. We come up with 3 ideas that could potentially do it. We run ICE to filter out the bad ideas from the good ideas. And then when we have a couple ideas that we really, really like, well, then we'll forecast it. If this metric improved by 8%, how would this impact our revenue down the line? And when we did this, I thought it was going to be focused on improving our show up rate within our things and build better systems for like building a connection to get people to show up to the call. But it turned out just improving our click-through rate by 1%, if we changed nothing else, it had a $50,000 difference on the impact that it would have down the chain. So now it's like, when we just did ICE, it wasn't so obvious which one we should focus on, and I would have been wrong. But when we projected it, this is going to have a massive and significantly bigger impact than any of the other options that we have. And so that's another reason why we want to like track our stuff really well, so that when we have ideas, we can make our best assumptions, but then we can actually project out those assumptions and compare them based off of our current data, which is going to actually have the biggest impact. That's pretty badass, right, Ben? Max and I did that like last week.
That's pretty sweet. I'm happy
right?
you guys do that for ProKinetics.
Yeah, no, actually, I'm meeting with Luke. So for context, everyone, we're working on like new KPI dashboards for all our mastermind members, all of that stuff. But what we're basically building into it is that along with all of your KPIs that you're tracking, at the bottom of those, it's going of your like monthly report. It's also going to have like projections for an assumption of like, if I increased this metric, or this metric by 1%, projecting that out, which of these would have the biggest impact? And so it's basically eliminating or helping you identify, which metric, if we improved it by just this much, would have the biggest impact in the business, to help make it easier to identify right away, like every month. Even someone that doesn't know KPIs can know it's like, okay, well, if we improve that by 1%, it's going to be $20,000 more than any other metric we should be working on. So I'm going to do that. Yep. That's badass, right? I'm pumped for it. It's a really easy thing to do, but nobody does it. We didn't even do it until 2 weeks ago.
No. Wow.
Anyway, so to kind of tie a bow on this whole thing, it's really easy to make informed decisions. You just have to do the uncomfortable work of actually sitting down, blocking off time in your calendar to track your metrics, and then also blocking off time in your calendar to execute the strategy that you identified is going to move the needle the most. And so a lot of you just have to-dos, and you're trying to knock off to-dos in between patients, which means you're working on the lowest level stuff because it's easy to cross off and it creates the illusion of growth, instead of systematically deciding and projecting which is going to have the biggest impact and intentionally blocking off your calendar every week with a 3-hour-long gap where you can focus on working on that constraint. If you can just do that, you're going to beat out 99% of your competitors, because everyone else is just flying blind, making shit up as they go. That's really it. That's really the secret to the whole thing.
Yeah, and it's a hell of a lot less stressful too.
It's so much less stressful. But that's the end of the podcast. If you guys have questions on any of this, or are trying to weigh your options of what you should focus on next, and you did your own ICE projection, drop it in the comments below. We'd love to check it out and tell you, what direction we'd go in if we were in your shoes. Thanks for listening, everybody. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the podcast. If you got value from this, make sure to share it with your partner, your friend, your colleague, whoever you think would benefit from this particular